My God. What the f is up, everybody? I got Jason out here. Can I get a hell yeah, Jason?
Hell yeah.
I knew you were going to do that. Today it's raining. We're going to restart our efforts here on the deck boards. I've already gone ahead and gotten the siding taken care of. We've got Jason over here right now who's taking that out to the dumpster. My diligent partner in crime out here. So today we're going to basically just be trying to rip these deck boards up. Today I'm going to be using something called a deck wrecker. It's a big pry bar and it's designed to rip up deck boards. Pretty neat. So let's throw the camera on and see how it goes. So there's going to be voiceover on this video, which I don't do a lot, and I'm just going to be kind of talking while the video plays on my second monitor to give everybody a good idea of what's happening. So this is Mr. Bill's house, and we are at the moment removing deck boards on what used to be a screened-in porch. It wasn't going very well.
Gotta get this first board out of the way and then we can get to work.
Yeah, okay. Sure thing, Gardner.
Alright, let's see if the deck wrecker's gonna work. Oh my God!
I'm not a weak guy either.
This is fucking horseshit. I hope whoever screwed these down is in hell. Oh! Unreal. Okay, plan C.
Okay, so prying the deck boards off with the deck wrecker, which normally works on every other deck that I've ever done, didn't work in this case. So what we had to do was cut the boards on both sides of the joists using a combination of a circular saw and the Sawzall, and that was how we were able to get these boards out. Like, we literally had to run the fucking circular saw up and down the deck on both sides of every single joist in order to get these boards out. I have no idea what kind of fasteners they used to screw these boards down to the joists, but when I say this is the hardest deck I've ever had to take apart, that means that carries some weight, because I've done just, man, maybe nearly 100 deck projects by this point in my life. You can see me and Jason here trying to figure out what's going to take the least amount of time.
Okay, everybody, listen up. I'm going to have to move the camera inside because we're about to destroy this deck. There's really only one way we can do it. Let me explain.
The thing that Jason is sitting on is called a joist. And the deck boards are screwed into the joist with these really annoying square head screws that are extremely strong and are proving nearly impossible for us to undrive, like, you know, screw them out of the deck, or to pry them up with the deck wrecker, which is a thing specifically designed to pull up deck boards. So being thwarted in both of those directions, what we've decided to do is take the circular saw, this thing right here, and run it up close as we can to the deck, to the joists on either side, like this, and then we'll have to come back and just knock these out one at a time with a crowbar or something. Problem is, if I keep going down this line, I'm going to run into the tripod. So I'm going to move the tripod and all my fucking gear inside so that we can knock this out more efficiently. And I'll turn it back on when we're done. Probably, I don't know, what are you thinking, like next month? Yeah, so shot's a bit crusty, but you get the idea. We basically had to run this thing up and down the deck a few times in order to get all these boards sawed out. A huge shout out to Jason here for just being the best helper. It wasn't easy what I was asking him to do. There was a lot of carrying material back and forth to the dumpster, which was, you know, it's a trip from Bill's place to the front of the house and back, carrying very, very heavy loads. So we managed to knock these out, as you can see in the time lapse here, and then we were able to move on to the second part. So the plan for this deck wasn't for us to turn it into a better deck. The plan was for us to, whatever, we're done now, was to turn this into a finished room, right? So there's several things that need to be done in order to turn any space that's screened in or whatever, sunroom, into a closed room. And I've done this before for a couple of people, myself included. The basic steps work like this. You got to get everything off the floor, including the walls, so that you can put down subfloor. You can't build a room on top of deck boards like this. Well, I mean, you could, right? You could put subfloor on top of this, but it wouldn't be as strong. And with building technology being the way it is, things consistently get upgraded, you know, from one generation of housing to the next. So at this point in time, the best thing for a subfloor is to use OSB. It's specifically Advantech subflooring, which we used 2 layers of, and you'll see us laying that down later, in order to get the room as quiet as possible. So I've found, working on a few studios recently, that the thing to shoot for isn't necessarily to have the most absorption in a room or the most diffusion in a room to make the room sound the best. The thing to shoot for is actually to have the quietest room possible, meaning that there's as little transmission of noise in or out of the room as possible. What that requires is a lot of mass in the walls and a lot of caulk, man. Fucking, you got to seal that thing up as tightly as possible in order to get the room to be just the lowest noise floor as possible. Try it out. There you go. Alright, Jason has been doing a really good job of removing the screw heads from these joists. So we're just even one more step closer to being finished with this bullshit part. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, I am walking while filming on the joists, and that's pretty impressive if I do say so myself. And I do.
I think they heard.
Alright, defogged the lens. You see this shit in here? The wiring is like cut, like they cut channels, like routed channels into this piece of tray. Long story short, if you're gonna have wires outside of a wall, they have to be in a conduit. Don't do that, it's a big no-no. And my battery's about to die. That's pretty much all we're gonna do today over here. Try again tomorrow. Jason, what are you doing?
Carrying shit.
Luckily, you are very good at carrying shit.
Hello. You might be wondering why I'm wearing this. The answer is, I'm putting insulation under here now. As you can tell from yesterday, we did a whole lot of work. Mostly Jason. Let's all give a round of applause for Jason. Took all these screw heads off, took all the boards up. It was a real pain in the dick. I mean, a real pain in the dick. And we're gonna be putting insulation underneath the floor and installing subfloor. And that is all we're doing today. It is Friday, the 20-something of June. It is fucking hot. I do not want to be wearing this, but I am anyway. Oh, also I fell off of a fucking chair and sprained my wrist. It hurts to do a thumbs up, I'm not joking. But the good news is, last time I was at Bill's place and I was working on studios with him up in Virginia, he bought me a fucking electric stapler, which I just lost all the staples out of. Anyway, I don't have to squeeze the thing, I can just press the trigger. Cool, great, awesome. Go leave a comment and tell me whether or not you think I am butt naked under this frog suit. It's fucking hot!
So go leave a comment down below if you think I'm butt naked or not. Just pause the video. I'm not going to say which it is. So at this point, we've got all the deck boards up, and we've removed as much of the deck boards underneath the wall as possible. And what we're about to do is install insulation in the floor to make sure that the floor is weather tight. We don't want there to be any moisture or ice or frost or whatever building up underneath the subfloor, which if you don't get the temperature gradient right between the room and the exterior can happen, especially down here in the south. This particular deck slash porch has an open floor. It's floating, meaning that it's not sitting on concrete, it's sitting on piers. So we wanted to make sure that the insulation was good, both for thermal properties, right? Making sure that we don't use, a lot of energy to heat and cool the room, and also just for, moisture barrier purposes. This doesn't serve as a moisture barrier, but it definitely helps with the temperature gradient. If you've ever seen signs on bridges that says bridge ices before road, we're kind of dealing with that same effect here. We don't want any sort of like condensation to build up on the bottom of the subfloor, which can happen if there's not significant or sufficient, insulation. At this point, I'm just kind of planning out the runs here for exactly what's going to be put where. Once on any construction site, there's always a moment or two where you have to sit down and plan out how things are going to work before you actually get down into the shit, which you'll see me do in a minute here, like actually on my back underneath the deck, stapling things up. The reason that it's important to plan things out is when you're doing something that's going to be repeated like multiple times, for instance, right? Like I'm going to be putting a lot of staples into boards. I'm going to be putting a lot of insulation into those boards. You want to make sure that it's going to work over and over again before you get into a situation where you're, up on a ladder and things aren't working out, or underneath a deck on your back and things aren't working out. And then once you get the process for it, like once you've actually got a couple of these things screwed into place and a couple of these things stapled into place, it kind of goes from there. And you can see me here screwing in some ledgers into the side of the decking in order to both secure the insulation and later secure the subfloor. In a moment here, we're going to be installing joist hangers. We don't need them, but just to bring the thing up to code, these are necessary. Give me my Van 08. And what Jason's going to do is he's going to screw one in so that we can kind of see what's going on here.
Alright, what are you doing over here? So this joist hanger right there is just basically serving as backup. Go ahead.
Wait a minute. That's concrete behind there, so you can't use the long SDSs, you have to use the short ones. Alright, so while Jason is screwing in the joist hangers with the small SDS screws, I want to just remind everybody that these joist hangers aren't necessary, which, what I mean by that is, there is a ledger board, there is a beam, two in fact, that are supporting these joists. I just wanted to bring this quote-unquote deck up to code by using joist hangers. And we did use these on both sides, as well as securing the joists to the beam, the main beam in the middle of the deck, with hurricane ties. Again, there's enough weight on this thing for it to never move. I just want to be sure that it's not going to wiggle or move over time. Nothing would just fucking send me harder than a hurricane coming through and blowing this thing off of its foundation. Again, highly unlikely, but when there's a remote possibility on a project like this, where things are, very tightly engineered, tolerances are very tight, and there's a lot of money being spent, it's never a bad idea to be just triple sure that you're doing the right thing. These joist hangers don't cost more than $1 a piece. These screws don't cost more than a couple cents a piece. It is 100% worth it to get that peace of mind so that I can sleep at night knowing that everything is tied down tightly and secured, in the best way possible. And Simpson does a great job with their strong tie system. I would recommend it to anybody who's building a deck. Alright, so now that we've got all the insulation in place, we're going to slowly start to put down the subfloor. And these things get installed one at a time. They are installed
in a tongue and groove fashion, and they have a right side up and a wrong side up. And what you can see me doing over here in the corner is putting what's called subfloor adhesive into a large caulking gun. And I ran subfloor adhesive on every single joist, and this does two things. Number one, while the subfloor is being secured to the joist, it creates more permanent bond. Actually, over time, it cures and creates a what's the word for it? It's not really necessarily an adhesive. It's more of an elastomer. It creates a epoxy-like tight bond without fully curing all the way. And this does two things. Number one, it secures the subflooring to the joists in a more permanent manner. And number two, it also prevents squeaks. So if you've got a house that's older and you walk around on it and you can hear squeaking, this is what prevents that. This plus a long screw going through the subfloor. And you can see me using my big flooring screw gun, so shout out to Makita, which I think is called Metabo HPT now, which is weird, or HPT for my Southern Hemisphere viewers. And it's a really nice gun because you don't have to bend over and get down on your hands and knees in order to secure boards. So, pay attention to me using that tool. It was expensive, but it was 100% worth it, both, for saving my back and also for just the ease of getting the subfloor laid down. So you can see us here putting the subfloor in, hammering it into place after putting down subfloor adhesive, and then you can see me using the flooring screw gun here to secure it to the deck. We laid down 2 layers of subfloor perpendicular to one another. So the first one was perpendicular to the joists so that it would prevent racking and squeaking, and the second layer of subfloor was perpendicular to the first. Now, there is a bit of controversy whether or not you're supposed to lay the second layer of subfloor if you're doing 2 layers of subfloor perpendicular to the first one. I find that it's better just for security purposes and also for longevity purposes, keeping things from moving and squeaking. I'm going to shut up now so you can see the rest of this build unless something super important comes up. Oh yeah, so this is a shout out to one of the most standard tools of all time. Jason was just using a chalk line, and it's, again, one of the oldest tools ever. It's still one of the best tools for getting a straight line between 2 points. You basically mark one side of a thing you're trying to cut, you mark the other side of the thing you're trying to cut, and then you pull the line tight and snap it. It's got chalk on it, so when it snaps, it leaves a line on the material that you're trying to cut. And you can see us using that tool here a lot. Been using the same tool since fucking early days of construction back in Egypt when they were building the pyramids. They were using chalk lines. So shout out to chalk lines, man. You can't fix what works. All right, so one more thing about subflooring that I might not have mentioned. You want to keep the pieces of subfloor at a book matching type of joint, because if you don't, you're going to get a joint that runs down the entire deck, and that really weakens the structure of the subfloor. Again, this stuff has a tongue and groove, so almost like tiling, you want to make sure that there is a little bit of variation in where the joints land, just to make sure that the system itself is strong in the way that it sits. So you can see 2 things here.
Jason is knocking out the siding on the half walls, which we're actually going to remove. We're going to remove all the half walls entirely. Actually, that's not Jason. Holy shit, that's Dylan. What's up, Dylan? Shout out to you. I'm going to leave this mistake in the video because I think it's kind of funny. I had Dylan helping out here on the site for a day or two. Friend of George Sedaris's, who's also a friend of the channel, and both of these gentlemen, Dylan and Jason, just extremely hardworking men. It's always nice to have a hand like that out here on the site. You can see me here, two things. One, I'm getting a bit more into sobriety, so I've lost a bit of weight, which is interesting. And you can see a new tool belt that I purchased with a harness that has suspenders, and boy, that thing, I've used it ever since. It takes the weight off of your waist and puts it onto your shoulders, which is great.
Feels good to get some shit out.
Yeah, you're getting it. Fuck you, Rebecca. Yeah, so again, while Dylan is fucking going to town on these screens, busting everything out, I'm going to be continuing to install the subfloor. Using the subfloor screw gun, we've got a whole rack of screws built in there. Teaching Bill how to use it here as well. Bill is the supervisor, just coming out to check on everything, making sure we're doing the right stuff. Thank you, Bill. Thanks for keeping us cowboys in line. Really appreciate it. So when you're doing the second layer, a little bit of subfloor adhesive is necessary, but not a ton, because these two layers, you want them to be laminated together, but not in the same sense that you would laminate plywood together if you were trying to make, you know, like plywood milled lumber or something like that.
Yeah. Stupid trap shit.
So at this point, we had knocked out all of the siding from the old half walls, and you can see a post that I was using to hold the roof up. We're not replacing any of the roof. The roof is fine. We're just going to drywall it in and close it in, the rafters and stuff like that. So I had to knock out that post where the door used to be, and you can see me bracing up a new post here in order to move the post around so that we could lay more subfloor. This looks scarier than it actually is. I've done this before to rebuild decks. It's called a dead man, and it keeps the roof from falling, and it also keeps you from becoming a dead man if the roof does decide to creak and groan a little bit. A couple things are about to happen here. We're going to lay the last pieces of subfloor, which is awesome, and I'm also going to begin to take out the half walls so that we can frame and install the new full walls. While we're sitting here looking at the back of the house, I am going to take out both the French doors and both of those windows in order to close the wall in. That was quite the chore. We ended up creating a false wall back there for a few reasons. Most notably so that we could add a ton of insulation between the living room, which is now the den, and what would become the studio, this porch here. So
You can see me and Dylan laying out and marking and cutting the final pieces of subfloor. This subfloor took a bit longer. Oh, shout out to Gardner for the sexy carpenter cut right there. Sorry about that. This floor took a lot longer than I expected, but I'm really glad we did it because it allowed me to get a very solid floor. I said this multiple times on the project, and I'll say it again. This is the most solid floor that I've ever constructed. That thing is bomb-proof. And then, you know, of course, once I added the additional layer of underlayment for the floor and the bamboo flooring itself, which was 5/8 inches thick, this floor, it turned out to be like 2.5 inches thick, which is insane for a floor. And yeah, again, most solid floor that I've ever constructed in my entire life. I don't think I'm going to ever be able to do it a different way, just because of how well this turned out. I'll probably be a 2 layers of subfloor guy for the remainder of my building career. Also, shout out to Georgia for being so hot that it looks like I pissed my pants. Oh my gosh. This was one of the hottest summers I've ever experienced in the South, and I've lived down here for 33 years. Global warming is definitely a thing, guys. I don't hear that enough in construction circles, but fucking Jesus Christ, it was hot. Yeah. All right. So now what you're going to see is Dylan and I laying out, cutting, and assembling the new walls. Stud framed walls are pretty standard and easy to do. These were all 16 on center, and we left some openings for windows. Bill said it was really important for him to have a lot of sunlight, a lot of natural sunlight in this room, so that it would mirror his studio that he had in San Francisco. Now, Georgia is not San Francisco. I would argue that Georgia is more beautiful than San Francisco. No shade to my San Francisco listeners or viewers. We just got a lot more green over here, man. The Georgia summer and spring are just lush. Look at the greenery. It's like that here in this state. And it's not, you know, other states in the South that I've lived in, out of the states in the South that I've lived in, I would say Georgia's probably the greenest. It's just got such a lush, dense amount of deciduous foliage, and I love it here. I really do. I'm gonna have a hard time moving if I ever need to. I'll just miss how green it is. So we have one big picture frame window in the front, and we're gonna have 5 transom windows up near the ceiling so they don't interfere with the treatments that we're gonna be putting in later. So when you see me frame these walls, you're gonna see me frame the walls for a big picture frame window up front, and you're going to see me frame transom windows on the rear of the walls. What we're doing at the moment is figuring out what the height of these walls is so that we can, you know, get Dylan cutting, production cutting, using the chop saw, and just handing me studs so that I can bang them together as fast as possible with my nail gun. And I know back in the day they used to do this with hand tools, but I cannot imagine framing walls without a nail gun and a chop saw. All right, so Dylan's cut up the studs, so you can see me marking out the locations of each of these studs and then assembling the wall just like this. 2 nails per stud in the footer and header, or the top plate and bottom plate. I don't care what your terminology is there. It's the same thing. And again, 16 on center, you could run into some weird situations where the last stud, right, is there's like 20 inches or so, and you have to have a weird stud in the middle. So that's exactly what happened. You can see me here needing to cut part of the stud off because I miscalculated how wide that particular bay was. And you'll hear me refer to the areas between these 4x4s as bays. Oops, I needed to modify it a little bit more. So this is pretty typical for the first, I don't know, couple of things that you do in a production run, right? Once we got this first one in, once we got things situated and got our measurements and everything and our call-outs, running smoothly, we were able to kind of roll on to the next ones. It's not difficult to modify framing. All you got to do is just pry the nails out, cut them down, and reattach the boards. Really not a lot of waste going on here. But once we got everything where we wanted it, it was very easy to just nail the framing in. None of this framing is going to be load bearing. These 4x4s are taking care of it. This is more or less a timber framed structure, and we're just adding the studs and the balloon framed walls so that we could attach drywall and siding and sheathing, or sheeting, depending on the part of the country you're in, to the structure, right? So nothing load bearing here. All that structural work has been taken care of by the 4x4s. We're just putting these on so that we have points at which we can attach the rest of our construction materials to satisfy our construction requirements for this part of the country. So here's an example of marking and laying out a typical stud wall. You mark 16 on center using your tape measure, then you draw a line across using a speed square, which is almost exactly the same size as two 2x4s side by side. There's a reason for that. Then you bang them together with the nail gun, and you raise the wall. So we did this for the bays. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bays in total. So 9 walls to frame. 3 walls to frame, 9 bays between the timbers. This took us about a day and a half. Again, for these front 2 walls, there's no windows, but the rest of these are going to have windows, and you'll see that in the next video here. But I believe that's all the time I have for this video. So if you want to continue to watch the series of me building Mr. Bill's studio, tune in for the next one. Anyway, thanks for watching. My name's GARDNSOUND. This isn't typically what I upload on this channel, but if you enjoyed it, feel free to go ahead and hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. We'll have more videos coming. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.